I just spent a few weeks traveling in the United States, and in this video I'm gonna talk about my time and my experiences there. I got plenty of questions from you guys in the comment section, which I have in front of me on my laptop right now. And yeah, there are timestamps down below so you can skip ahead to the questions you are interested in the most. And let's start right away with a question that I got actually asked a lot. It's probably the most asked question in the comment section. How safe did you feel? Because I've heard enormous amount of stories about the US. And yeah, the whole safety topic is a big one, and overall I can say, yeah, I have mixed feelings about that actually. So overall, like the tourist areas that I visited, I felt safe, I felt okay, but I can also definitely say that there were some sketchy areas here and there. Like as soon as you step outside the main tourist hotspots, it gets way more sketchy and you see some sketchy people around. And overall, the US is not the safest country I have been to. There are plenty of countries that I visited in the past where I felt way safer. Basically every country in Asia is, in my experience, or the way how I felt, way safer. Same goes for the Middle East, for example. But that's not only something that is concerning in America, in my opinion. It's in many Western countries at the moment. I can also speak about my own country, Germany, for example. I don't feel safe in German cities anymore, at least after sunset. I would not take the metro on my own in my capital, Berlin, after sunset. So yeah, it seems to be, unfortunately becoming normal that many Western countries are not as safe anymore as they used to be. And I also had that feeling in the United States. There were some areas where I didn't feel safe, where there were people around that were clearly on drugs. And if people are on drugs, they become unpredictable. You don't know what's gonna happen. And sometimes you just walk by, they ask you for $1 or some money. So usually they don't really bother you. The same goes for homeless people. So many homeless people in many areas in the US, especially in Los Angeles, unfortunately. But usually they don't bother you, but still it leaves you with a bit of a bad feeling or like an unsafe feeling when you walk past these people. And for example, I remember there was one situation in Los Angeles. I was just walking to a 7-Eleven to get some drinks and snacks. And there was a guy who was clearly on drugs. He was walking around without a shirt and he looked very weird and crazy, and he was just asking me, hey, do you have $1? And at that moment I didn't have any change in my pocket, so I was just having like big bills and I didn't really want to give him like a $100 bill or whatever I had in my pocket, so I had no change. Then for like a split second I thought, oh, how is he gonna react if I'm not giving him money now? Because he was clearly on something, and you know, these people, they are unpredictable then. But luckily he was, nothing happened. I just told him, sorry, I don't have any change, and I kept walking. But that was one moment where I was like, let's see what's gonna happen. But overall, to conclude this question, and I'm very curious to hear your opinions in the comment section. If you have been to the United States, or if you're an American and you have been to other countries, how were your experiences? But overall, the majority of the places I visited, the tourist areas, I felt safe, but definitely not as safe as in many other countries I have been to in the past. And then the next question, tell us, how do you feel about tipping culture? And that's also a funny, interesting topic. I also got many questions asking about the tipping culture and how I feel about that. And it's maybe gonna be a bit controversial, but I don't agree with the American tipping culture. No, I don't. So first of all, let me say that when I was in the US, I did tip because, also you guys in the comment section explained to me that the waiters, for example, in restaurants, they rely on the tips because they don't get paid, not even minimum wage. So they really rely on customers giving them tips. And then when I am in the US, like do as the locals do, as I often say, so I was giving tips, usually around 20%, what I heard is normal. And I tipped my taxi drivers, and I even gave tips to people in like Starbucks, where some of you in the comment section told me you don't really have to do that. So I was tipping, but still I don't really agree with that. I think it's not my responsibility as a customer that the people working there get paid a fair amount of money, a fair wage. That should be the responsibility of the people running the places, like the restaurant owner. So why is it my responsibility to make sure that the waiter who serves me gets paid a fair amount of wage for his work? And then also what I don't understand about the tipping culture is, like, when it has to be 20%, why does it differ if I'm ordering a more expensive meal? So when I'm ordering a $100 meal, then 20% of that would be $20, comparing to when I'm ordering a $20 meal, then 20% of that would be $4. So why should I need to pay so much more money in tip just because I order with a more expensive meal, but the work for the waiter doesn't change? Like if I'm ordering a $100 steak or $20, I don't know, French fries and a cheap burger, like the amount for the waiter serving it to my table is the same. So why suddenly am I required to pay so much more? That also doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, the tipping topic is a funny and interesting one. I'm very happy and interested to read your thoughts about that in the comments as well. But yeah, to summarize again, I did tip in the US because also you guys explained me in the comment section, do as the locals do. But to be honest, I don't really agree with that. And then the next question, from a purely tourist POV, what was the hospitality like in the US compared to countries in Asia like Thailand? In case you don't know where this question is coming from, why is he asking specifically about Asia? I've been living in Southeast Asia for 6 years now, since 2019. And in the past years, I visited many countries, especially in Southeast Asia and in Asia in general on my channel. So many of my viewers are viewers that are interested in Asia, in Southeast Asia. And that's why I think this guy here is asking specifically about comparing the USA to Southeast Asia. And overall, the hospitality in the US was pretty good as well. I felt welcome there. The people are extremely talkative and open to strangers. And yeah, welcoming me like, oh, welcome to the United States, great to have you here. Things like that I heard plenty of times in the US. So overall, the hospitality was great as well, good as well. But if I'm really gonna be honest, it's not as good as in many countries in Southeast Asia. Like Southeast Asia or Asian countries in general are very known to have very outstanding hospitality. People treat you very welcoming, very friendly, very genuinely nice. And yes, I also experienced that in the US, but yeah, if you really ask me, there are still small changes. And I would say the hospitality is a bit better in most of the countries in Asia. And then the next question, how do you think people are in general in the USA compared to in Europe or in Asia? Are they happier, angrier, or more sad? And that's actually an interesting question because I thought about that while I was in the US. So something that I can say, or the comparison between Americans and European people, especially German people. American people are way more outgoing and talkative towards strangers. Like I just said in the other question as well, it happened several times that like strangers just started talking to me and then they said things like, oh, welcome to the States, great to have you here. Oh, you're from Germany, what brings you to the US? Things like that. And then they just started a conversation with me, and very outgoing. Americans also often speak very loud. So yeah, I think that's a big difference between American people and many European people. Also between Asian people. Asian people are often more reserved and calmer, and at least in public don't seem to be that outgoing and loud compared to Americans. And like this question is specifically asking about, are they happier? That is something that I noticed, for example, when I was visiting my own country, Germany last year. Asian people are way happier. Like if you walk around any city in Asia, in Southeast Asia, you see most of the people smiling, happy, being in a friendly, happy mood. And when I was in Germany last year, I noticed, like if you're sitting in a train in Germany and you have a look around, or at the airport terminal, most people don't smile. They have a sad face, they look a bit depressed. And overall, the vibes of the people don't feel as happy as the people in Southeast Asia. And it was similar in the US. I wouldn't say the Americans looked as unhappy and depressed as the Germans I saw when I was back in Germany last year, but definitely also not as happy and friendly and smiley as most of the people you see every day walking around Southeast Asia. And in case you're wondering, I'm currently back in Southeast Asia. This is where I'm based. I'm currently in Indonesia, taking a break for a few weeks before I'm traveling again. And also, like I said earlier, I spent the last 6 years of my life living in Southeast Asia, in different countries around here, and it is my favorite part of the world. But let's continue with the next question about the US. How have people in the US been treating you so far? So this is a 2-question part, so let's start with the first part as well. Yeah, overall, I have been treated very welcoming and friendly by the majority of the people in the US. Actually, can I think of one situation where that was not the case? Not really. Like the staff in restaurants and hotels were always welcoming and friendly, although to be honest, not as welcoming and friendly as I'm gonna compare to Southeast Asia again, because yeah, that's where I've been living for the past years. Not as friendly in Southeast Asia, but overall I would say yeah, I wouldn't say I've been treated badly in the US. It was respectful, it was welcoming, people were curious about where are you from, what are you doing here. So overall, I have good impressions of American people, I can definitely say that. And then the next question, do you have in mind the other cities that you want to visit in the US? So there are so many cities and states and areas in the US that are famous and that I would like to see. And to name a few places that come to my mind right away, Las Vegas, Chicago actually wasn't a lot on my list, to be honest, but so many of you in the comment section asked me to visit Chicago. It was probably the number one requested city by you guys in the comment section that I should visit. So I think the next time I'm gonna return to the US, I will definitely put Chicago on the list. And then I'm very curious to visit Texas. Please let me know in the comments which city is actually the best to visit in Texas. Maybe Dallas, maybe Austin, or maybe another place. Let me know in the comments. So Texas would be interesting, and then I would be curious to visit like a national park, like somewhere like outside of the big cities, some rural areas, some national parks. And here once again, if you have any recommendations, I would be very happy to read them in the comments, so let me know. And then is there any other place? Yeah, I think that's it. Maybe San Francisco as well. I think San Francisco is also famous and very well known, and that's also a place that I think I would be very curious to visit. And then, hi Ken, I hope you are keeping well. Would you consider general services and food in the US to be more expensive compared to most other countries you have traveled to? And yes, United States are a very expensive travel destination, so everything is more expensive. Hotels, food, services, everything is just more expensive there. And I would say you pay way more compared to like Asia, the Middle East, Southeast Asia, definitely, and you don't really get a lot more. Like I can give you one example, like something that actually shocked me when I arrived in Los Angeles. Maybe you remember my Los Angeles video. I stayed in a Marriott hotel that was nearby the LAX airport, and I stayed in plenty of Marriott hotels around the world, and it's one of my favorite hotel chains. I really enjoy Marriott hotels, and I arrived there, and I think the hotel room was $200 US per night. And okay, the room was a bit outdated, it was not the newest, but overall it was a decent room, it was clean. So that was not a big issue for me. But then the next morning, when I went to the breakfast, I was actually quite shocked. And that was incredible. So usually Marriott hotels in Asia, especially if you pay $100 upwards, you have amazing breakfast. Huge buffet, Western food, Asian food, Indian food, Middle Eastern food, so many choices. And then I arrived at the breakfast in the hotel in Los Angeles, and it was incredible, like 5 items to choose from. And then what shocked me the most, the breakfast was served on plastic plates and you had to use plastic forks and knife. And I thought, what? It's like in a hostel. This is a $200 Marriott hotel in the US, plastic plates and a selection of like 5-6 dishes. So there were scrambled eggs, there were bagels, oat, waffles and bacon, I think. And I think that was it already. And I think like a small selection of yogurts. So very little buffet. And yeah, then I thought, okay, that is what $200 a night gets you in the US. And you can stay in any random hotel in countries like Thailand, Malaysia, the Middle East that cost like half of that money. And I can guarantee you, you will have a way better breakfast selection. And in most of the cases also better rooms, newer, more modern, and also better service often. So that shocked me a lot in the US. Yeah, you don't get as much value for your money as you do get in other parts of the world. So I'm actually curious, like how much money would I have to pay in the US for a hotel to get a similar hotel experience that I get in Southeast Asia or in Asia in general for $100 to $200. Like even my $500 hotel in New York City was not on the same standard as many $100, $150 hotels in Asia. Yeah, so yes, the US are very expensive and you don't get as much value for your money as you do in other parts of the world for sure. And then also the next question is referring to something that was talked about a lot in my comment section. Why do you think the number of homelessness is higher in the US than in Asian countries? So first of all, I mentioned that already in my Los Angeles video. I saw plenty and plenty of homeless people, not only in Los Angeles, also in New York and also in Miami. Although Los Angeles was definitely the highest amount of homeless people I have seen. And it was actually incredible to think that you're coming to a first world country like the US and they claim to be the best country in the world. And then you walk through Los Angeles and you see so many homeless people and people sleeping in tents in the parks, by the side of the road, and then so many people are clearly on drugs, and then you don't feel safe around these areas. That was actually incredible, and I think I'm not in the position to judge the United States or to talk bad about the United States because I'm not an American, but I'm a German and I can judge my own country, and it is actually exactly the same in my own country, Germany. If you walk around any major city in Germany nowadays, the city centers are full with homeless people, with drug addicts, with high crime rates, not safe areas anymore, like cities like Berlin, our capital, Frankfurt, Hamburg. These are cities where I wouldn't feel safe anymore walking around the city centers, especially after sunset. And that is actually quite shocking, in my opinion, that, what's happening with the rest. I have friends who visited other Western countries in the past months as well. I watched videos of other travel vloggers visiting European cities in the past month, and it seems to be like that's not only the case in the US or in Germany, also in Italy, in France, in Paris, in London. So it seems to be, that this is happening in many countries in the West nowadays. Homeless people, high crime rates, drug users on the streets, and it's horrible to see. And then, I compared it to Asia, where I spent the last 6 years of my life, and you don't really see that in Southeast Asia or in Asia. You don't see that in the Middle East. Like when I was in the Middle East and I was in the UAE, in Dubai, I was in Oman, I was in Saudi Arabia. And in these 3 countries, I have not seen one single homeless person. I have not seen one single drug addict on the street. And I was in China, I was in South Korea, not a single homeless person, not a single drug addict on the street. And also in Southeast Asia, like homeless people do exist in Southeast Asia, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, the Philippines. You see homeless people, but I would still say not as much, especially not in the city centers of the capital cities or the biggest cities in these countries as it was in my own country, Germany, or in the US. So this might be an unpopular opinion, but I do think that Asia, especially East Asia, so countries like Japan, South Korea, China, are on the way to become the new first world. It's so much more modern in Asia, it's cleaner, it's safer, and the same goes actually, by the way, for the Middle East. The Middle East is equally as safe and modern and clean as East Asia. Maybe an unpopular opinion, but that's how it is, and it's actually quite sad for me as a German to see that this is happening in Germany too. But okay, let's not focus too much on this topic. Let's continue to the next question. How long did you stay in the US, and how long would you recommend is needed for a holiday visiting the US? So I've been to the United States twice now. The first time was in Los Angeles. That was basically just on the way to Mexico, and I spent 3 days in Los Angeles back then, and then actually another day on the way back. So I left Mexico and then I transited 1 day in Los Angeles again before I flew back to Southeast Asia. And then the second time, recently when I was in New York, I was in Washington and I was in Miami. So in total, I spent like these trips combined about 3 weeks in the US. And how much time is needed? Well, that depends how much you want to see. The US is a huge and interesting and diverse country. So it depends really what you want to do, which places you want to visit. My general rule of thumb is every city that I visit, I'm trying to stay for at least 3 full days. So arrival day, stay number 1, and then after the arrival day, 3 full days. For example, if you stay in New York, Los Angeles, Miami, all these bigger, interesting cities, I would recommend stay at least 3 full days. And that gives you, I think, enough time in each city to get a feeling, see the most famous places, maybe also enjoy a bit of the time without rushing through everything. So my general rule of thumb would be every place you want to visit, stay 3 full days. And then this may be a long shot question, but would you move to the United States? Interesting question, but a simple answer, no. And I wouldn't move to the United States, and I also wouldn't move back to Germany. And the reasons are simple. I basically just talked about that in a previous question. I just feel so much happier living in Asia. I feel safer in Asia. It's more modern here. It's cleaner, and it's also way more affordable. The cost of living are crazy in the United States, are crazy high in my country, Germany. And in Southeast Asia, where I spent I feel like I'm repeating myself a lot, but yeah, I spent the last 6 years here in Southeast Asia, and you get such a better quality of life because the living costs, of course, are way cheaper. But of course, I know I'm in a privileged position. I'm coming from the West. I'm earning Western money, and then I get to spend it in Southeast Asia, where of course the cost of living are way lower. I know that would be different if you are a local here in Indonesia, for example, and you don't earn US dollar or euro, then of course it's different for you. But I can just speak from my perspective. Yes, I am in this privileged position. I am a Westerner earning Western money, and then I live here. But yeah, for me, way better quality of life here. Just the feeling, like I noticed that in the US, how less of a life quality you have if you don't feel safe in a place. Like I didn't really feel 100% safe walking around Los Angeles or New York. Constantly have the feeling of, oh, I need to look over my shoulder, need to be careful holding my phone because somebody can drive by on a motorbike and snatch it. Yes, these things also happen here in Asia, in Southeast Asia, but not as often. And I'm never worried about safety in Southeast Asia, in East Asia or in the Middle East as I am in my own country, Germany, and in the US. And that is crazy. And that's probably the main reason why I would not move back to Germany, and probably also why I would not move to the United States, to be honest. Maybe I'm like over dramatizing it a bit. Maybe it's not as bad if you really spend a few months in the US, but honestly, I think everyone who has been to Asia and is from, let's say, Germany or from the US, and you know how safe life can be here, I think you would think similar then to what I'm thinking now. Just imagine you want to raise a family with kids. If you're living in New York, would you feel comfortable letting your kids play in a park on their own? Would you feel comfortable letting your kids go to school on their own in the subway? Probably the answer is no. Would I feel comfortable letting my kids take the metro here in Jakarta on their own? Yes, I would. And the same would be in Thailand, the same would be in Malaysia, in China definitely, in South Korea. So it's just a way better quality of life if you can really feel safe somewhere. And that in combination with the way lower cost of living, no. I'm very happy to live in Southeast Asia, and I will continue to stay here. And I would not move back to Germany, and I would also not move to the United States. But I know that maybe sounds like I'm very negative here, but overall I like the United States, and I think it's a great destination to travel to as a tourist, but I wouldn't move there. And then a question that is a bit more personal. What is the one thing you miss from Germany when you travel abroad? And there are two things that I really miss about Germany. First of all, that's German bread rolls. Brötchen, as we call it, a favorite breakfast probably, and that is something I am never able to find anywhere else in the world. Yes, I can find bread rolls in different countries, but I haven't found bread rolls that are as good as the ones in Germany. I just miss German breakfast with bread rolls, ham and cheese, maybe a cucumber or tomatoes on the top. That's something that I really miss. And another thing I miss about living in Germany is going to watch football with my friends, or soccer for my American viewers, going to the stadium. My team is Werder Bremen. It's playing in the Bundesliga, the first football or soccer league in Germany. And when I still lived in Germany, I often went to watch the games live in the stadium. That's something that I really miss actually. And then, what was your favorite area in Los Angeles? Venice, Santa Monica, Hollywood, Beverly Hills. And these are exactly the areas I visited, plus the area around the airport. And the area I enjoyed the most was, I would say Hollywood was cool to see because it's so famous and known, but the best area was definitely Beverly Hills. Beverly Hills was the only area in Los Angeles where I have not seen homeless people, where it was very clean everywhere, and it just looked nice, like these wide roads, the palm trees everywhere, the fancy looking houses there, nice malls. Beverly Hills, actually I regretted a bit that I didn't spend more time in Beverly Hills. So if I come back to Los Angeles the next time, I think I will probably stay somewhere around or in Beverly Hills and explore that area more, because that area made a really good impression. And then, what did you like most about New York City? And yeah, definitely my favorite thing about visiting New York City was seeing all these very famous places that I always dreamt of visiting, that I always saw in movies when I was a kid, like the Empire State Building, the Central Park, the Statue of Liberty, and then just the Times Square, of course, and just walking down these alleys of skyscrapers everywhere. That was a cool feeling. And yeah, just the vibe of being in Manhattan for the first time, that was so cool. And that was one of my favorite travel moments ever, visiting Manhattan for the first time. Incredible experience as someone who grew up watching American movies. And yeah, that was my favorite thing by far of visiting New York City. And then also an interesting question: where's your luggage? Before you boarded the train to DC, you had no bags with you. How are you traveling the country with any suitcase? So I often travel just with my backpack, a carry-on backpack that I don't have to check into the planes, so I can carry it with me while sitting in the plane, you know what I mean? So I don't have to check it in. And yeah, I just prefer traveling like that. Traveling light without a suitcase gives you so much more freedom when you're traveling. It's so much easier and you don't have to wait for your suitcase to arrive at the airport. So I definitely prefer that. Like sometimes I have to carry a suitcase with me. It depends where I'm going and how long I'm going. But usually if I'm having a trip around 2 weeks, I am able to manage to pack everything just in my backpack. But if the trip is longer than 2 weeks, then usually I have to bring a suitcase as well. Also, if I'm visiting countries where I need winter clothes, for example, like last year when I was in China, I needed winter clothings. So then of course I also carry my suitcase. But yeah, in the US it was fine, just the carry-on backpack. And actually to my surprise, and which was pretty convenient, like many of the hotels in the US have like coin laundries. So I think 2 or 3 times during my trip in the US, I just went to the basement of my hotel, made my laundry there, coin laundry, just wait 20 minutes, another 20 minutes to get it dried, and then you have clean laundry. So that was no problem. And then, is New York expensive or cheap, and how much did you spend there? So New York was definitely the most expensive city I've ever been to. I don't really know if all of New York is that expensive, or is it just Manhattan? So I was only in Manhattan. Probably that would be my guess. If you leave Manhattan, things get a bit cheaper, but Manhattan definitely the most expensive place I've ever been to. Everything is crazy expensive, hotels, food, getting an Uber around the city. Like I literally paid hundreds of dollars for Uber rides in Manhattan. And that's crazy. Like a 20-minute Uber ride from one side of Manhattan to the other is like $60-70. Crazy. And yes, you can take the subway for like $2, but the subway is overcrowded, dirty, there are homeless people around. It's not as comfortable as just taking an Uber ride. So I often actually took an Uber instead. And yeah, you spend way more money by doing that, but it's more convenient. But yeah, overall, New York, very expensive. And how much did you spend there? So my hotels, I stayed in 2 different hotels in Manhattan. The first one for my first 4 days was the one that you saw in my New York arrival video, right at the Times Square. And then I switched to another hotel for 1 night before my train ride, because the new hotel was right next to the train station. So I took the train then from there to Washington. And that hotel was, I think, was a Hilton hotel as well, like $250 a night. Also very expensive for what you got there. The same as with the hotel I talked about earlier in Los Angeles. Very tiny breakfast selection and breakfast also on plastic plates. So yeah, $250 a night doesn't get you a lot of value in US hotels. So how much did I spend? So if I leave out the hotels, like hotels of course varies a lot. You can stay in cheap $100 hotels and you can spend $1,000 per night for hotels in Manhattan easily. But if I leave out the cost for hotels, I probably spend around $150 to $200 a day in Manhattan. So for food, for Uber rides, transportation, for things to do, yeah, around $150 to $200 per day in Manhattan. And then, are you planning to watch any major professional leagues like NBA, NFL, MLB, MLS while in the US? And that's actually something I would be very curious about, visiting sport events in the US. I know Americans are crazy about sport like NBA, NFL, MLB I think is the baseball league, right? And then MLS is the soccer league, which I think is not as popular in the US as the NBA or the NFL. So I would be very curious to visit an NBA game or an NFL game. To be honest, I don't know when the seasons are. How do you get the tickets? Do you have to order the tickets like months in advance? Or can you show up at a New York Knicks game spontaneously on the day they play and just get a ticket? Please help me out in the comment section. Let me know, and then maybe the next time I'm in the US, yeah, I can see if I can visit a sport event. That would be very cool actually. And then, hello, do you think that the costs of transportation and hotels are worth the cost to visit in the US? The cost seems so high compared to many other countries. And yes, I think we talked about that topic before. You pay a lot of money for hotels in the US. Transportation is also more expensive. Uber rides, train rides, flights in the US are also more expensive compared to like cheap flights, for example, within Southeast Asia or within Europe even. So yeah, everything just costs more in the US. Be prepared for that if you want to travel there. And also in my experience, you don't get as much value. Another example I can give you. So when I took my flight back from New York to Singapore, like you saw my video taking the world's longest flight from Singapore to New York, and then I actually had the same flight back, which I didn't film, but yeah, I booked it as a return flight. night. So after Miami, I flew back to New York for one night, and then I left with Singapore Airlines again back to Singapore. And so I flew business class on the way back as well, same as on the way to the United States, Singapore Airlines business class. So I was at the Newark airport, and as a business class passenger, you of course have lounge access. But then I what's the past of access? I went into the lounge, the business class lounge in the airport, and it was a tiny lounge, no big buffet there, nothing at all. It was by far not comparable to the lounge experiences in Asia. Worlds apart, so big worlds apart. Actually, in fact, I left the lounge after 5 minutes because it was actually more comfortable to just wait at the gate. Because the lounge was totally crowded, was way too small for the amount of people. There was no great food options anyway. And yeah, I actually left the lounge because at the gate there was hardly anyone waiting. So it was way emptier there, and yeah, so that says it all, right? So I'm a business class passenger and I don't spend time waiting at the lounge. I prefer waiting at the gate. I think that says a lot about the quality of the lounges there. So you don't get as much value as you do in other parts of the world, definitely. And then, as a non-American, what have you heard about and what are your thoughts on Detroit, Michigan? Would you visit? To be honest, the only reason why I really know Detroit is because of Eminem. I used to listen to Eminem when I was younger, and he's from Detroit. Also, I remember seeing the movie 8 Mile with Eminem about Detroit, about his life in Detroit. That's a movie I actually watched several times. So that's probably the only reason why I really know about Detroit. And then I think Detroit is famous for the cars, the car industry. I think Ford is producing in Detroit or is from Detroit even. So I don't really know much about Detroit, but would you visit? I would say it's not like top priority to visit Detroit when I'm returning to the US, but I always say why not? Like any city could be interesting, and yeah. Maybe you can give me some reasons why it would be interesting to visit Detroit in the comments. Then yeah, maybe I would be keen to visit Detroit in the future. And then, what do you recommend to a teenager who wants to travel in the world, see the world? Where do I need to start? How do you explore before you go for a new country? I'm curious. In addition, I want to say you that you make my English better. I learn a lot from your videos. Keep it going and enjoy. Thank you very much for the comment, and my recommendation, if you want to travel as a teenager, start nearby. Wherever you live in the world, I don't know where you're from, but start nearby. Probably as a teenager, your financial abilities are not that high, so you have limited amount of money, and that's also how I traveled. When I was a teenager, when I was a student, I had not a lot of money to travel. I just visited nearby countries. Like, luckily, Germany in Europe is like in the center of Europe, and we have plenty of countries nearby and plenty of cheap flights or buses that go to these countries. So I remember like going on a weekend trip to Portugal for like, there was like a $20 return flight offer. So I just went to Portugal, stayed in a cheap hostel, spent I think 3 nights there, and then flew back to Germany. So my recommendation would be start nearby, or even you don't really have to go to another country, like maybe visit a popular town nearby or interesting national park nearby where you live. So you don't have to go far in order to have great experiences. Start locally. And one of the biggest tips I can also give you is start traveling solo. If you don't have friends or family members who want to travel with you, or let's say your friends don't have time, don't have the money, don't let that hold you back. Like, I also did solo trips before I did YouTube. Like, sometimes I was curious to go somewhere, and then I asked my friends like, hey, you want to come to, like, I visited Jordan, for example, a country in the Middle East. Also very spontaneous weekend trip, just because the flights were cheap, and none of my friends wanted to join me. None of them had time, and I still decided, okay, I'm going on my own. So just traveling solo, in my experience, will definitely be worth it, and you will not regret it. And don't let that hold you back from experiencing the world, and just go solo in case none of your friends want to join you. And now let's also get over to some questions you guys sent me on Instagram. I'm also called Ken Abroad on Instagram. Feel free to also follow me there. You can see behind the scenes, live updates, and many things you can't see in my YouTube videos. So feel free to also follow me on Instagram. And then the first question from Instagram: which city did you feel safest? So to recap, I visited Los Angeles, New York, Washington DC, and Miami. And out of these cities, by far the place where I felt the safest was Washington DC. Although I have to say, in Washington DC, I only stayed in the city center, which is the area around the White House. So it is the political center of the United States. So of course that's an area they are keeping clean. It's well protected. So it's probably no surprise that that's also one of the safest areas, probably in the whole country. But yeah, to answer the question, that's where I felt safest. And then following by that, I would say Miami. Like Miami overall also felt, at least the areas in which I have been to overall also felt safer compared to New York and Los Angeles. And then also a very interesting question, and yeah, I got many comments similar to this. Why would you visit a country on the brink of a dictatorship? And also I got comments like, oh, I'm unfollowing you now because you are visiting the US. I'm subscribing because you're supporting Trump. How can you visit such a country like the US? I'm unsubscribing you. So many comments like that actually. But I can only say, like, I don't care about the political situations in the countries I visit. I'm visiting as a tourist. I don't care about the politics of a country. And for me, it's also, the people are not the same as the politics. Like, the politics of a country can be this, and the people in the country can be that. It's the same, like when I visited China, for example. Every time I've been to China here on the channel, so many comments accusing me of being paid by the Chinese government. Oh, you're talking good about China, you must be paid by the CCP. Many comments like that, and also comments like, how can you support such a country like China? And then I'm visiting the US, the same type of comments. How can you support such a government like Trump? Like, I'm just a tourist. I'm just curious to see Manhattan, the Statue of Liberty, the Hollywood sign. I don't care about the politics of a country. So those type of comments I always find ridiculous. And yeah, like the politics of a country are never a reason for me to not visit a country. Like if I stop visiting countries where I maybe not agree with the politics, man, then maybe I can't even visit my own country anymore, because there are also things in the politics that I not necessarily agree with. But also I'm not a political channel. Like I don't talk about politics on my channel. I don't really like talking about politics in videos or on social media in general, so I'm just a happy travel channel. And politics is not part of my videos and will also not be part of my videos in the future. And then, is the United States the most expensive place you have been to? Simple answer, yes. Out of all the countries I visited in the past, the United States are by far, I would say, the most expensive country. Everything is just so much more expensive there. Food, accommodation, transportation, and yes, way more expensive than many other countries. And definitely, if I'm comparing to Asia once again, even I'm repeating myself probably, but definitely way more expensive and less quality in return compared to Asia. And then, how is the immigration process like at arrival? Also a question I actually got asked a lot. So for me it was different every time I entered the United States. So I entered the first time I flew to Los Angeles, and then when I left Mexico I had a transit again for 1 day in Los Angeles, so I entered a second time, and then I entered the third time in New York upon arrival there. So 3 times I entered the United States, and 3 times it was a kind of a different process. So first of all, I can say the waiting queues, or the time you have to wait to get to the immigration officer, is the longest out of all the countries I visited in the past years. Like many countries, for example, also have these automated gates by now, where you don't even have to speak to a person, you just scan your passport and then you take a picture. They don't seem to have this in the United States, so you actually have to speak to a person in the United States. And the queues were always long. There were not a lot of staff working there, so I think it took me like around 45 minutes every time I entered the United States to get through. And then as soon as you make it to the immigration officer, the process was easy and straightforward for me. Also, I know I have a German passport, so that probably does give me some privileges when I'm entering the United States, because the German passport is one of the strongest in the world. So when I entered in New York, there were no questions asked. So I could just go through basically. He checked my passport, he scanned my passport, he took a picture I think, and then fingerprints I think as well, and then I could enter. The first time I entered in Los Angeles though, he asked me several questions like, what's your purpose of your visit? Where do you stay? Can you show me hotel reservation? What's your job? I told him I'm a YouTuber, I have some YouTube videos. Then he wanted to see my channel. And then he asked me, do you have employees? I said yes. He said, are these employees traveling with you? I said no. So the first officer, he did ask me some questions, but I think the second time I entered Los Angeles, the only question like what's the purpose of your visit and where are you staying and how many days you stay, I think, as well. My thought, maybe the first officer in Los Angeles entered all these details into the system, and then the other officers, for example, the one in New York, already saw the information in the system, so you didn't have to ask anymore. But yeah, long waiting queues, but once you reach the officers, actually very easy and straightforward. Just answer a few questions, and then in my experience at least, they let you through. And then, do you plan to film the World Cup in 2026? In case you don't know, the Football World Cup, the Soccer World Cup, is in the United States and Canada and Mexico next year in June and July. And yes, I actually do plan to visit, especially the United States, during the World Cup next year. I also applied to buy tickets for the World Cup. It's like you have to apply there, and then you need to get lucky that you are chosen to be able to buy the tickets. It's a long process. Already started. In case you want to get tickets, the process already started. So I already applied for that. I don't know yet if I'm able to buy tickets, but I will try my best to get tickets to hopefully some Germany games. That would be the best case for me. And then, yes, I'm planning to stay in the United States for a few weeks during the World Cup next year. Maybe I'm also going over to Canada then, or to Mexico. If I get tickets for games that are in Mexico or in Canada, that would be cool. But yeah, that's also probably going to be the next time I'm going to visit the United States again. So June, July next year during the World Cup. And then, do you find the US to be friendly compared to Southeast Asian countries? Once again, we have a comparison here between Southeast Asia. That's where my channel is coming from. That's where I spent my past years. Overall, yes, Americans are also very friendly and welcoming and treated me welcoming and nice. The same goes for Southeast Asian people. In Southeast Asia, the hospitality is usually incredibly high and people are very welcoming and gentle and nice. But I also had good experiences with people in the US. If you really want to get an answer from me to choose one, I would say Southeast Asia is still on top or above the United States when it comes to friendliness and hospitality. But that doesn't mean I had any negative experience in the US. And then, was there ever a time where you felt genuinely unsafe? Not really unsafe, like I never felt like I'm in danger now of getting robbed or like something worse. But there were definitely a few situations where I felt not really that well, you know, like I remember when I walked in Los Angeles from my hotel to the nearby 7-Eleven, there were some sketchy people around, people clearly on drugs, homeless people, and yeah, especially the people on drugs. You never know how they react, like they can be unpredictable. And then also like in Venice Beach, there were so many homeless persons around Venice Beach. I remember reading one of the comments saying like, oh, these homeless persons, why they bother you? They don't do anything. And yes, in most of the cases that's true. But the thing is, many of these homeless people are also clearly on drugs. And that's when like I don't feel comfortable being around persons who are clearly on drugs. And yeah. These are also probably persons that might rob you because they need money to buy new drugs, right? So I don't really feel safe when I'm around these type of people. And unfortunately, you see many of these people in America, also in New York. Like I remember like in the evening, walking around my hotel, just trying to get some food. Many homeless persons right in front of the hotel. And it just gives you like an overall feeling of, I'm not really feeling 100% comfortable here. You know what I mean? Like not a situation, or I didn't have a situation where I felt like, oh, I'm totally unsafe around here. I need to run away, you know, or call the cops. That was not the case. And then how long and smooth was the application for the US ESTA? So the ESTA is like not really a visa, but like something I need to apply for before I go to the United States. I don't know how that rule is for other passports, but with a German passport, I need to get an ESTA before I travel to the United States. That's something I can apply easily online. I think filling it out takes like 10-15 minutes to fill it out. And then there was a fee. I think it was like $25 fee to pay for that. And I think I received my ESTA literally the same day as I applied, so a few hours later. And I think my ESTA is valid for, I think it's 1 year actually, 1 or 2 years even maybe. So the second time I went to the United States, I didn't need to apply for new ESTA. I could use the same ESTA as the first time when I entered Los Angeles. So I still have my ESTA now, and yeah, I can use it then next year probably as well when I'm returning to the US for the World Cup. But yeah, the process was smooth. Fill it out online, 10-15 minutes, pay your $25. And then in my case, I received it the same day. And then, did you get scammed in what you buy in the US? And not really. There was not a situation where I felt like, oh, damn, I just got scammed here. Like, tourist scams don't seem to be as common in the US as in other parts of the world. There was one situation, maybe you remember, like when I was in Los Angeles on Venice Beach, and these boys came up to me and trying to sell me the chocolate bars. And I think they sold me the chocolate bars for $3 or $4. And then so many in the comment section told me that, oh, that was a scam. These bars are usually $1. They scammed you. Okay, if you want to call that a scam, then maybe that was a scam, but yeah, okay, then maybe I lost $2, $3. I wouldn't really call that a scam, but yeah, not really like bad scams happen to me. Like in other parts of the world, tourist scams are pretty common and well known, but in the US, I didn't have any bad experience when it comes to scams. And then, what was your favorite food throughout your US trip? The food topic is also an interesting topic because, how do I say that? It's very difficult in the US to eat healthy. Like, it's never difficult to find food. There are literally fast food restaurants everywhere, but the problem is these are fast food restaurants. And I don't like to eat fast food, especially not every day. But yeah, you walk around the streets in New York, for example, you have McDonald's, you have Burger King, you have all these chain restaurants, and then you have street food burgers and street food kebabs and hot dogs and pizzas, but it's very difficult to find a healthy meal. And I was struggling with that in the US, to eat healthy, proper, nutritious food. So yeah, that was something I really struggled with in the US. And my favorite food, to be honest, I did end up eating a lot of fast food just because it was difficult to find proper healthy food. I can give you another example. The hotel I stayed at in Los Angeles, there was no restaurant inside the hotel. However, there was a Starbucks next to the hotel and I forgot the name, like a place that sold pizza and sandwiches, similar to a Subway sandwich. Now, Subway sandwiches, in case you're wondering, are also not really healthy. The breads are usually full with sugar, so it's not really a healthy option. And then there was no restaurant near my hotel. At least, like, there were some fast food chains around, but no healthy, proper restaurant where I could order, like, I don't know, like a plain chicken breast with some vegetables, a salad on the side, some rice or noodles, nothing like that. So difficult to find healthy food in America. So I end up actually eating a lot of fast food, which is usually not my favorite. However, the fast food I ate for fast food, it was good. Like the In-N-Out burger, Five Guys was delicious as well. So for fast food, it was good. But if I really have to choose a meal, I would probably choose the pizza I ate in New York. You remember in my New York video, the pizza? That was a really good pizza. So maybe that was my favorite meal I had in the US. And then we have another question about safety. How safe did you feel in the US day to day compared to the Middle East and Southeast Asia? Yeah, without talking about this topic again too much, overall I did not feel as safe as in Asia or as in the Middle East. In the Middle East as well, we haven't really talked about the Middle East yet. Very similar, like in East Asia, when I was in Dubai, when I was in Saudi Arabia, when I was in Oman. You walk around the cities, it's clean, it's safe, no homeless people. The metros are incredibly clean and affordable to use. So yeah, it's worlds apart. Like Western countries nowadays when it comes to safety, and Middle Eastern and especially East Asian countries, worlds apart. Definitely. Like, I think everyone who has been to the Middle East and to East Asia before would agree. Let me know in the comments if you don't agree with that, if you have been to these places. And also Southeast Asia, the city center in Bangkok, the city center in Kuala Lumpur, in Jakarta feels way safer than New York or Los Angeles. Were you first skeptical upon your arrival about how you might get deported by ICE? To be honest, no. I know ICE is currently all over the media in the US and also internationally for deporting people and arresting people, but I was not worried at all because I knew I'm not here illegally. I am legally in the United States. I entered legally. I'm a tourist here. So there was nothing to worry about. I think you only have to worry about these things if you know you're doing something illegally. If you visit the United States or you enter the United States without a proper visa, or you overstayed your visa, or you enter it illegally, then you have to worry. But as someone who enters the States legally, you don't have to worry about anything. And then the most memorable part of the trip. There were many memorable parts because I visited so many famous places that I always dreamt of visiting, but if I really have to choose one, probably I would say walking around in Manhattan, and wow, the vibes in Manhattan are so unique, and seeing all these skyscrapers and yeah, the famous places, the Statue of Liberty, the Times Square, the Central Park, the Empire State Building, the view from the top of the Rockefeller Center over Manhattan, especially the night view was so cool. So yeah, visiting Manhattan for the first time, that is something that I will never forget, and that was so memorable and one of my favorite travel experiences and memories now that I ever had in my life. What was your least favorite part of traveling to New York City? And the least favorite, yeah, I have to mention it again, I'm sorry. If you're an American watching this, maybe I sound super negative now, but yeah, I want to answer these questions honestly, and if you're a tourist thinking of visiting the United States, you know what to expect maybe. So my least favorite part of traveling to New York City was that I didn't feel 100% safe. Like, constantly I feel like I have to watch over my shoulder. You don't want to hold your phone out because so many people in New York told me be careful with your phone. People snatch it. You can't really take the metro and feel 100% safe. There were so many crazy, sketchy people hanging around, especially after sunset. So that was my least favorite part of traveling to New York, that I could not just enjoy walking around and feeling 100% safe, you know. And then the next one, how do you experience the political situation in the US? And then once again, I'm not a political channel, I don't talk about politics on my channel, and I also don't care about the politics when I'm visiting a country as a tourist. Like, it was the same when I was in China especially. So many comments like, how can you support such a country? I would never travel to China because of the government. And then I'm going to the US and I get similar comments like, oh, I'm unsubscribing because you're supporting Trump by visiting the United States. How can you visit such a country in this situation? I don't care about politics. I just want to enjoy my time as a tourist. And I just want to share happy videos with you guys here on my channel. Yeah, the political situation of a country is one thing, and then the people is another thing. So I don't care about the politics in the country when I'm visiting as a tourist. And then, how safe was Washington, DC? Yeah, Washington was the safest place I have been to. I only stayed in the city center, but I felt very safe there. It was the cleanest place I have seen in the US. No homeless people around there, at least in the city center. That's the only place I've been to in Washington. So Washington overall felt very safe. And then, was there really crazy people as the internet says it has? And yes, there are crazy people on the streets in America. And I don't really know how to describe it, but I think many of these crazy people are clearly on drugs, and that's what makes them crazy in their head. But I saw people screaming absolute nonsense stuff around, people being almost naked in the streets, like in their underwears, walking around. Yeah, you really see crazy people in America. And once again, that goes back to the safety topic. It gets boring now, right? I'm always talking about the safety topic. But yeah, I don't feel safe around crazy people, and you do see crazy people a lot in the US. And then the next question, will you do another US trip with your girlfriend in the future? Probably not in the near future, at least, because, well, there are two things. First of all, my girlfriend is from Indonesia, in case you don't know. And the US is not, I don't really know, but I think the US is not among the destinations she is very keen to visit. Like, for example, as a German, I grew up with being surrounded by a lot of American culture. Like, we listen to a lot of American music in Germany. We watch a lot of American movies in Germany. That's not really the case here in Indonesia. Like, the people here, they watch like Korean TV series, Korean movies, I think Japanese movies, like Indonesian movies. They don't really watch a lot of American movies here. I don't really think they listen to a lot of American music here. So she didn't really grow up with being surrounded as much with American culture as I did. So I don't really think that she's that curious or keen to visit the United States. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is she has an Indonesian passport, and that's not the strongest passport in the world, unfortunately. So with a German passport, I am in the very privileged position that I can basically show up in any country around the world, and I either can enter visa-free or I get a visa on arrival. And there are a few countries where I do also need to apply for a visa, but that's usually very straightforward and easy for me. Unfortunately, with an Indonesian passport or a Southeast Asian passport in general, except the Singapore's passport, yeah, you have a bit of a hard time to traveling as freely around. And I think especially in this time, it's probably not easy to get a American visa if you have a passport that is not that strong. So probably not in the near future. I don't have any trips planned to the US with my girlfriend. We have other trips planned to other countries in the near future. But yeah, maybe one day, who knows. And yeah, this by the way was a video on my second channel, Can Abroad Life. On this channel I'm posting more personal videos, videos that don't make it to my main channel, also a lot of Q&A videos like this one. So if you're also interested in these type of videos, feel free to also subscribe to this channel. And if you want to see my full-length videos about traveling in the United States, then head over to my main channel, Can Abroad. I will also leave a link to it in the description. And then thanks for watching and see you in another video soon. Ciao guys!